The making of a movement politician, Zohran Mamdani's journey from Kampala to Queens. What does it mean to be the child of one of the world's most prominent intellectuals, only to choose a completely different path of political change? How does someone raised in the hallowed halls of American academia find their political home not in theory, but in the gritty reality of tenant organizing and state politics? This is the story of Zohran Mamdani, not the academic titan, but the assemblyman. A 31-year-old democratic socialist who represents one of the most diverse districts in the world, not by leaning on his famous name, but by building power from the ground up. His journey, from the intellectual ferment of his childhood home to the front lines of New York's housing justice movement, challenges our very ideas about how political change is made. To understand Zohran Mamdani, you have to look beyond the famous surname and trace a unique path from Uganda to Morningside Heights, and finally to the New York State Assembly, a childhood between worlds. Zohran Kwame Mamdani was born in 1991 in Kampala, Uganda, into a world of intense political and intellectual engagement. His father, Mahmoud Mamdani, was already a globally renowned scholar, and his mother, Mira Nair, an acclaimed filmmaker. This was not a typical upbringing. Dinner table conversations likely involved deconstructing colonial legacies and analyzing global power structures, providing Zohran with a radical political education from his earliest years. Yet, this was also a life of movement and dislocation. When he was just a year old, his family relocated to New York City so his father could teach at Columbia University. Zohran grew up in Morningside Heights, a stone's throw from Columbia's ivory tower, but a world away from the Kampala of his birth. This position, simultaneously an insider and an outsider to American life, became a foundational part of his identity. He was the son of an Indian-Ugandan intellectual and an Indian filmmaker raised in the heart of Manhattan, navigating the complex codes of American culture while being steeped in a deeply internationalist, anti-imperialist worldview. He attended the prestigious Stuyvesant High School, a breeding ground for New York's elite, but his real political awakening would come later, in the lecture halls and protest circles of his university years. The contrast between his family's critical perspective on power and the privileged environment of his education created a tension that would eventually demand resolution through action. The education of an organizer, Zohran Mamdani attended Wesleyan University, a school known for its progressive politics. It was here that the theoretical frameworks of his childhood began to collide with the practical urgencies of American political struggle. While he studied, the world was being reshaped by the 2008 financial crisis and the rise of the Occupy Wall Street movement. These events exposed the deep fissures in the American economic system for a generation of young people, and Mamdani was no exception. After graduating in 2014 with a degree in political science and economics, he did not follow a conventional path to law school or a corporate job. Instead, he took a position as a housing counselor at the Chaya Community Development Corporation in Queens. This was a decisive turn. His workplace was on the ground, dealing with the brutal day-to-day realities of New York's housing crisis, evictions, predatory landlords, and the displacement of working-class and immigrant communities. This was a far cry from the theoretical debates of academia. Here, politics was not an abstract discussion. It was about keeping a roof over a family's head. For 3 years, Mamdani worked directly with tenants, learning the intricacies of housing law and, more importantly, the power of collective action. He saw how organizing could transform people from helpless victims of a system into powerful agents of their own liberation. This experience would fundamentally shape his approach to politics, cementing his belief that change comes not from appealing to those in power, but from building power among those who have been excluded from it. The lessons learned in Queen's tenements would prove more valuable than any political theory in preparing him for his future role. The political is personal, running for office. The year 2020 was a political earthquake. The COVID-19 pandemic laid bare the profound racial and economic inequalities in New York City, and a new wave of socialist politicians, inspired by the success of figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, were challenging the democratic establishment. Mamdani decided to run for the New York State Assembly, representing District 36 in Astoria, Queens. His campaign was a direct extension of his work as a housing organizer. He wasn't a career politician parachuting in. He was a member of the community running on a platform born from the demands of that community. His flagship policy, the Cancel Rent campaign, emerged directly from the desperation he witnessed among tenants facing economic ruin during the pandemic. His campaign was also a family affair, but not in the way one might expect. While his father's work provided an intellectual backdrop, it was his mother's documentary filmmaking that perhaps offered a more relevant model, a commitment to telling the stories of the marginalized. Zohran's platform focused squarely on the material needs of his constituents: universal rent control, a state-level single-payer healthcare system, and defunding the police to reinvest in communities. He brought an organizer's mentality to the race, focusing on deep canvassing and building a genuine movement rather than relying on traditional political machinery. In a stunning upset, he defeated the 13-term incumbent Arevela Simotas in the Democratic primary. His victory was widely seen as a triumph for the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, which had endorsed him, and a sign of the growing power of the movement's grassroots, hyper-local organizing model. The win demonstrated that a new generation of politicians, trained not in law firms, but in community organizations, could successfully challenge entrenched political power. The Assemblyman, theory meets practice. Now in office, Zohran Mamdani represents a new breed of politician. He uses his platform not just to propose legislation, but to amplify the work of organizers on the ground. He has been a vocal proponent of good cause, eviction laws, fought against budget cuts to public universities, and consistently pushed for greater taxes on the ultra-wealthy. His approach reflects what he learned as an organizer, that lasting change requires building counterpower through sustained collective action. His presence in the often-stayed chambers of the Albany State House is itself a form of protest. He brings the uncompromising energy of a movement organizer into an institution designed to temper and dilute radical demands. The tension is palpable. He is an outsider who has managed to get inside, and he is using that position to hold the system accountable from within. He represents a bridge between the world of activist demands and the levers of governmental power, constantly working to ensure that the energy of the streets informs the policy making inside the capital. So who is Zohran Mamdani? He is more than just the son of a famous intellectual. He is a product of a unique transnational upbringing, a veteran of grassroots organizing, and a test case for whether a movement built on tenant rights and socialist principles can wield real power in one of the world's most complex political landscapes. His story is still being written, but it already serves as a powerful reminder that there is more than one way to change the world. For his father, it was through challenging dominant narratives in academia. For Zohran, it is through building power, seat by seat, in the neighborhoods of New York City, proving that the most meaningful politics often begins not with grand theories, but with the immediate struggles of everyday people.